The Panasonic Lumix S1H was released a couple of months ago, and it is one of the, if not the most powerful handheld mirrorless cameras ever made. It's got specs that are incredibly impressive, features that even pro cameras that are way more expensive don't have, and it does all of that, and it can still take a picture or two. I mean, let's not get crazy. All of that though does come in at a cost. This is an eye-wateringly expensive hybrid camera coming in at $4,000 for just the body. Just for this is $4,000. That's like a motorcycle. So after the last 2 weeks of near constant use, is the S1H worth that very steep price tag? Let's find out. What's up everyone, I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. So again, I've been saying a lot of awfully nice things about the S1H over the past couple of weeks, and I do want to clarify that I'm not sponsored by Panasonic, I'm not sponsored by Lumix in any way, shape, or form. I've never spoken to anybody from Lumix. I'm just a guy that started off with a G7 and has turned into a huge Panasonic fanboy, and I purchased this myself. This video isn't going to be super in-depth in any technical feature or aspect. If you do want to see a little more in-depth videos, check out my previous works covering the S1H. I've got videos comparing this to some of my other favorite cameras, and a video about my favorite tips and tricks that I've been using to get the most out of this beast. What we're going to do today is discuss what I really like and what I don't like as much from the perspective of an online video creator, because that's how I use this camera, as I make online videos. Before we get too much further into the video though, let's switch out the S1H and shoot the rest of the video in 6K, because why not? Why not? Wow, we are in 6K, but the problem is this whole video is gonna be in 24 frames per second. Gross. So let's start off with the negative. So the first negative I have is the price. Now I know this is designed to be a high-end camera. I totally get that. And the features they put in here, 6K video, 4K 60, 10-bit, potentially raw externally here soon, anamorphic, those features don't come cheap. But in my mind, the natural progression and upgrade path of the Lumix line would be the GH5 around $1,000, the S1 around $2,000, and the S1H around $3,000. Who knows what might end up happening? Price cuts were very aggressive in the camera marketplace in 2019, and I assume 2020 will not be any different, so hopefully next year, the S1H will be a little lower in price. The next negative is Panasonic's stubborn stance on phase detection autofocus. It seems like every other single camera brand, even Nikon, is embracing good, reliable autofocus on everything from their low-end cameras to even mid-range cinema cameras, the Sony FX9 and the Canon C500 Mark II being the newest higher-end selection. And I just don't get the attitude here. It's literally the thing holding them back right now. If it's licensing fees or heat management or processing power, I don't know, but I would gladly give up the 6K mode in this camera to get phase detection autofocus. I would give up a lot. I mean, look, I get it. I totally understand that every camera made does not need to be a YouTuber's camera. You know, it doesn't have to be made for me. But Panasonic is the outlier here and absolutely will be losing sales. I know for a fact they're losing sales for this camera going forward, because it doesn't matter if you are a YouTuber or a one-person corporate wedding filmmaker person, good reliable autofocus can make your life infinitely easier, and it is the future. Like, it's not even the future, it's the present. Those are really the only serious negatives I have with the camera. Everything else is just minor nitpicks. But in all fairness, let's cover a few of those real minor nitpicks before we get to the fun part of the video. I don't like the wheel on the back of the camera. This is the same wheel from the Lumix S1, and I didn't like it there either. It's just a pain in the butt to use. And actually, I mean, when you're using it and you're trying to click in the direction, it gets messed up all the time. I hate that wheel so much. I like the one on the GH5 way better. I also don't like how darn big the body is. Again, I know heat dissipation, fitting in all the tech, but this body is huge. And when I first got the GH5, I thought that was a big camera, but the S1H makes the GH5 seem like it seems like a point and shoot now. You also can't tap to focus the same way that you can on the GH5. On the GH5 in manual focus, you can tap on the screen, and wherever you tap, you can do single shot autofocus, and it works great. It's how I run the camera 95% of the time. On the S1H though, you have to tap, then hit the AF button. Not a big difference, but it is a pain, and it's just another muscle memory thing that you gotta relearn. Another minor problem, but the flip screen has the ability to tilt and fully articulate. That's not the bad thing. The bad thing is if you do it in that where you tilt and articulate, you actually have to, the screen doesn't reorient itself until it's fully snapped back in front of the camera. So if I'm in front of the camera like right now, and I wanna monitor myself, I can't get the full benefit of that new design because the screen has to be flush with the camera. And the last of my nitpicks is the new Lumix Sync App. While it works better, like we're controlling the camera with it right now, it works better than it did when I made the S1 series of videos. It's just not as useful as the older app that you can still use with the GH5. I do kind of wish this worked with the GH5 app. Okay, blah, we got the negatives out of the way because those are gross. Because what I really want to talk about are the positives, and spoilers, I seriously love this camera. Over the past couple of weeks, I've had a glut of other cameras in here trying to unseat it. Heck, a few days ago, I had a C200, and that's a legit cinema camera that everybody loves. But nothing's been able to unseat the S1H for me, which that was really surprising. Not because I'm against it, but my initial impressions were it was too big and too expensive to really fit into my personal workflow. But it has been able to win me over with a few of these key positives. First off, and it's not something that I normally focus on, the image quality. This camera has the best color science of any camera I've ever used. I mean any camera of any brand, and that I get that might be a bold statement to make, but I'm gonna make it nonetheless. Generally, when you talk about hybrid cameras, Canon is the accepted winner when it comes to color science. I don't know that I agree with that. I do agree though that they do have pretty pleasing images that don't take a lot of effort to get. Whether they're king or not, that's up for debate. But the color science and the image quality on the S1H are easily the best I've ever seen. And again, I've seen a lot. The real win when it comes to color science is this has the same profiles and color information as Panasonic's pro level cameras. Like they're very like cinema cameras. This shares the color information. That means good skin tones, razor sharpness without that like digital sharpness that you can find on lower end cameras. Dynamic range in ways that I've never seen, but what really brings it together is the quality of the image, not from like a higher numbers or better specs view, but from a highlight roll-off is legitimately impressive point of view. And that leads me to thing I like 1B to the 1A of overall colors and image quality, how easy it is to work with those images to tweak them for even better results than what you get in camera. Normally, like up to about the last 6 months, I'm a standard picture profile is good enough for YouTube work kind of a person. I like getting what I get straight out of camera. Well, I have been dabbling with shooting in flatter and flatter profiles. We're in log right now. I like that so I can have a little more room to work after the fact, and since I've lowered my production release schedule, I have more time to craft each individual video. And with that, the vlog in the S1H is by far my favorite picture profile ever. It takes almost no effort, I typed that in all caps in the scripts, to grade the vlog here. If you don't want to grade and just use a LUT to do all the work, well, good news, Panasonic has 35-ish LUTs available, and some of them basically grade your footage for you. The one that I like the most, and I've been talking about the most, is called the Nicest LUT. Combine that with thing I like 1C, Luminance Spot Meter. This is basically a little box that guarantees you'll have perfect exposure each time, and you'll never have a problem getting those images exposed correctly. Legitimately, I've never seen a camera that makes it as easy as the S1H to get really good images, even if you're using log footage. When it comes to resolutions though, it would be easier to say, well, the camera shoots in 6K, of course it's better than any of the competition. I mean, they can only muster up 4K, and the 4K looks great. And that kind of segues into the next thing I really like about the S1H, the options for resolutions and frame rates. The S1H has 7 pages of resolutions, frame rates, and codec options. At the top, you've got 6K, 10-bit, leading you all the way down to even full HD options. If you have a preference for how you want to capture your images, the S1H will absolutely have your back. It's got anamorphic support built into those choices. So if you really want to get your lens flares on, like you want to get that super wide stretched out look, it's built right into the camera. It's so good. It's so good. Next up on the train of awesomeness is the body itself. Yes, it is big, I complained about it earlier. No, I probably won't drag this thing everywhere I go, but what I really like is how customizable the camera is. Almost every single button can be changed to do whatever you want. This camera has a metric boatload, like metric. Boatloads are in metric, the metric scale. It has a boatload of features, and it's nice to be able to turn most of these physical buttons into quick ways to use them. My own personal customizations are the ISO and exposure compensation buttons have been changed to the Wi-Fi and 4K live crop modes, which I use all of the darn time. I've also got one of the front buttons changed into a focus pull, so even if the camera is in manual focus with all of the benefits that manual focus has, like focus peaking, punching in, all that stuff, I still have the ability to use one-shot autofocus. You can autofocus in manual focus, like, I love this camera. The next major thing I really like is that beautiful articulating touchscreen. Even though we did have a problem with it earlier, this is easily my favorite design camera screen of all time. It's super bright, it's fully touch enabled, and it's got one of my favorite modes ever with its, I guess you could call it like operator's mode, where it transforms and shows literally every functional setting the camera is running in a quick and succinct manner to see what's going on and just to move from there. Plus it can tilt and flip around, so neither video shooters or photographers should be able to complain about it. Though I'm sure some still will. And the final big thing that I'm really happy about, and should come as no surprise to those of us that grew up with the GH5, that's the built-in in-body image stabilization. I was kind of concerned that Panasonic's full-frame adventures would sacrifice some of their previous capabilities, i.e. that stabilization, to make a camera like this work, or to even make a camera like this with the full frame sensor. And I'm happy to say the stabilization continues to be fantastic here. Why this matters is I've gotten to a point in my own productions where I want as little gear as possible. I don't want a gimbal, I don't want a cage, I don't want to rig a camera up. If I can just use the body by itself, that's awesome. If I can get away without using a tripod, I won't bring a tripod, and it's stabilization like this that makes that whole system work. If I needed more equipment to make this camera run, I wouldn't want to use it as much as I do. I would rather have a bigger starting camera than a smaller body that needs a cage, needs a monitor, and batteries, and cables, and a whole bunch of other junk to get a similar effect. I like what this has. Whew, almost 2,000 words later. Side note, I can't tell if I just have more to say in these current videos or if I just like typing so much. I love talking about cameras. How is the S1H holding up, and do I recommend this after all of this time? Well, it is holding up remarkably well. I actually really like this camera, and this is the first camera that I could think that will probably replace my GH5 as a primary do-everything system. Do I wish it had better autofocus? Yes, absolutely. But I'm so used to not using continuous autofocus, having used the GH5 for so long, that it's not that big of a deal for me personally. Because however, I'm not sure that I could recommend this to other creators. It's expensive. Like $4,000 is a high-end, not mid-range or low-end, but high-end, fully functioning YouTube studio camera, audio, computer, lights. You could get so much of a studio space for the cost of this camera, and the GH5 isn't that far off from the capabilities on display here. I could only recommend this to somebody like myself that already has an established channel or revenue stream, a love for Panasonic cameras, and is looking to upgrade to a much better sensor and much better image quality than any other hybrid camera has to offer. And if you do, if you've watched all this and you've decided that the S1H is right for you, I bet you'd love to see this video where I talk about all the best tips and tricks that I've come up with using this thing as much as I have, because I have been using it an awful lot. Click here to watch that video. Click, click, click. It's right here. It's so easy to click. Just click it. It's okay. Just click right here. Thanks for watching.